Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jeremy Walsh, and I'm the Director of Support, Training, and Documentation for BNI Connect. I'd like to welcome everybody to the webinar today. So today we're embarking on our leadership team series of webinars for the month, and today we're going to be talking about the chapter goals for leadership teams. This is part of a four-part series for leadership teams. Again, today we're going to be talking about chapter goals. We're then going to be talking tomorrow about the leadership team tools and, I'm sorry, not tomorrow, Tuesday, January 26th, about leadership team tools and reports. And then following that, we're going to be talking about the chapter web pages. Followed up on Thursday, January 28th with the online renewals for leadership teams, so how the online renewal process works. So again, this is mainly for leadership teams, though if you are a chapter member, not on the leadership team yet, there's nothing bad in here. This is really about establishing goals for your chapter and how BNI Connect can help you to track those tools. So, a couple of housekeeping things before we get started with today's webinar. This is a live webinar as usual, so that means that if you have any questions as we're going through the material today, please do feel free to ask those questions. I see them pop up on my screen when you type them into the questions panel. I can then answer them if it has to do with what we're talking about, or if you have something unrelated but still want to ask it about BNI Connect, I welcome all questions about BNI Connect. I'll be happy to answer those additional questions at the end of today's webinar. We're scheduled for about 30 minutes to get through this particular content. Now, that being said, although the content should be done in that half hour, I am always happy to stay on this call until every single question has been answered. So please feel free to ask as many questions as you would like to. We are going to be recording this webinar as well, so you can go back and review it later. Or if you don't have your whole leadership team here, I mean, ideally, you would be on this call as your president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, and your director consultant, all on this call together to hear this information. But if you're not all here together, then you can definitely share this recording with the people that you should be establishing these goals for your chapter with, namely, again, the other parts of your leadership team and your director consultant. You'll be able to find those recordings on the support site as well as on our YouTube channel. So let's go ahead and dive into our chapter goals. Now, the chapter goals is based on a program by a man named Tom Fleming. He's an executive director out of the Central West regions of Florida, the Tampa Bay area. And he has had an amazing track record in his region of having extremely high performing chapters of, he has an average chapter size of well over 40, approaching 50. That means that just about every chapter in his region has like 45 members in it. And they're all performing at a very high level, which means that their members are making more money. And that's our goal here in BNI, is that we want to have successful chapters, successful members, and that everybody is getting the most out of their membership. One of the ways we can do that is by really treating our chapter more like we treat our businesses. And one of the ways we do that is by establishing goals for the chapter. Now in BNI Connect, we can do that through the goals program. And the nice part is that as the year progresses, BNI Connect will start to put in your results. So you can compare, hey, this is what I projected versus these are my actual results. And it's extremely helpful. So let's take a look at how that works. Now to get there, we need to go beyond this home screen. The home screen here is all of the everyday activities of putting in your slips and things like that. But we're going to go to the operations menu. The operations menu is where we go to input various things where we're doing tools, whereas reports are read only. But if we want to use the goals program, we're going to go to operations for that. So I'm going to go to the operations menu and the chapter level operations. Now, once I'm there, we'll see a bunch of different options on the left-hand side for meeting management and visitors and mentoring and all that stuff. What we want to click on is Manage Goals. And under Manage Goals, you should see two options. Enter the chapter goals and view the chapter goals. If we want to be doing the data entry piece of it, we're going to go to Enter. If we just want to view the results and see more of a report format for it, we're going to go to View Chapter Goals. If you don't have this here, normally enter chapter goals is limited to the leadership team. So the president, the vice president, the secretary treasurer, the director consultant for the chapter, the ambassador for the chapter, those level people. However, the view chapter goals is usually accessible to everybody. So once your leadership team has established the goals, the chapter can follow along with them and participate in monitoring those goals. So what we first need to do, so this is for my Antarctica Burr chapter, what we need to do is we need to establish some goals for the chapter, and we do that by clicking Enter Chapter Goals. So the first screen that we're presented with, and I already have this one filled out for the Burr chapter, is we do need to establish a long-term vision and a mission statement for the chapter. And this is really intended to be kind of, I don't want to call it just a one-time only. You can always update it later, but for however long you have your chapter, this is really your guiding principles for your chapter. So what we're going to do is we're going to type out a long-term vision. The long-term vision is really, where do we want to get to with this chapter? So it's more of an idea of, that far-reaching goal. Do you want to be the biggest chapter? Do you want to be the best chapter? Do you want to be the most educated chapter? Do you want to be the highest producing thank you for closed business chapter? In your mind, what is your dream for this chapter? So here in Antarctica, I have a very simple vision, and that is to grow the chapter to be the largest chapter in the entire continent. In addition, we want to be the #1 chapter in closed business and referrals within a 200-mile radius. So you'll notice here that I'm not putting in the long-term vision really so many specific numbers as I am the concept of where we want to get to. Again, this is more of a guiding principle, which is also what the mission statement is. So along with your long-term vision, you do need to come up with a mission statement for your chapter. So if the long-term vision is where do we want to get to, the mission statement is how are we going to get there? Again, what's going to be our guiding principles for getting to that long-term vision. And here, our mission statement at the Burr chapter is we are going to help members increase their business through a structured, positive, and professional word-of-mouth program that enables them to develop long-term, meaningful relationships with quality business professionals. And I'm going to leave it at that. So once you've created these two things, these will stay with you through the goals, no matter how long you plan out your goals for, and it can even go from leadership team to leadership team to leadership team, unless they choose to edit them. What we next need to do is to choose a start month and year. So the way this works is that you can plan up to 6 months worth of goals at a time. It can be any 6 months you want it to be. You'll notice that it's putting in April of 2016, and that's because they're proactively assuming that I've already established the goals for this 6-month term in BNI. As you know, the terms in BNI, the leadership team terms in BNI go from October to April, and then from April back to October again. So they're assuming that I'm a good leadership team person, and I've already established my goals for this October to April, and we're looking forward to the next April to October. So unfortunately in the Burr chapter, I'm just not that good. So what I'd like to do is actually just start planning goals from January. So I'm just going to go back and choose January. As I said, you can choose any time period you want to. And if you want to do a whole year's worth of goals, do this first 6 months and then do the next 6 months afterwards. So I'm choosing January 2016 and I'm going to click Go. When I do that, the screen is going to change into more of a spreadsheet. Now we'll be entering the actual goal numbers for the upcoming 6 months. And this is where, it makes a 6-month spreadsheet for you to work with. Now, before we even get started, you do have a decision to make. When we're entering our goals, we're going to choose whether we're going to be putting in big numbers or small numbers, is what this comes down to. So if you're more comfortable, and most people do it this way, they put in a whole chapter number. So they want to say that as a chapter, we're going to do 200 referrals each month, as opposed to saying we're going to do 4 referrals per member. You can only choose one way because what it does is it will then calculate out the results that we'll see in the view chapter or the view chapter goals screen based on what you choose here. Again, most chapters do leave this as for whole chapter. Now, as we go down the screen here, you'll see that there are a number of what we call chapter success drivers. Again, those are chapter success drivers. And these are the measurable qualities of the chapter, or the measurable activities of the chapter. So let's take a look at those. Those are all in these kind of dark blue highlighted sections. We have attendance percentage, the total number of one-to-ones, CEUs or chapter education units, visitors, new memberships, the total number of members in a chapter, the number of referrals, and the amount of thank you for closed business. Now, under each one of these goals, we have the ability to plan them out for 6 months. So I have January, February, March, April, May, and June here. You'll see the goal number. So this is our target number that we're trying to reach. And then you'll see 2 blocks underneath that, and that's mechanism 1 and mechanism 2. So what are these mechanisms anyway? Well, a lot of times, I'm sure all of you on the call today have positions and jobs outside of being on the leadership team of your chapter. We all do, and that's why we're in BNI to begin with. But what happens is that now we're in this leadership team position, and after the meeting's done, we have our regular lives to go back to and return all those phone calls and emails and everything, and it's very easy to get distracted and almost forget about some of the things we need to do in our leadership team role until the following week. And then all of a sudden another week goes by and another week goes by. What these mechanisms are meant to help you to plan out your leadership team time and plan the activities and really the ideas you have and document those and put them into this sheet so that you can remind yourself to do those on a monthly basis, all in support of these various goals. For example, let's take a look at this very first one here, which is the attendance percentage. Now, up in Antarctica, in our Burr chapter, well, we're struggling a little bit. It gets really, really cold in the winter, and people may not venture out to their meeting as much as they should. So we have a pretty low attendance percentage at about 86% attendance right now. And what I always find when we're coming up with these goals is, I started with January on purpose, and that's because we're in January right now. So we kind of know where we are. So when I'm establishing the goal for January, I'm really just putting in a realistic number of where I am right now. Now, the next easiest thing to do for me is to come up with, well, where do we want to be in 6 months? So where do we want to get to in 6 months? And let's say that in the next 6 months, we want to be at 96% attendance. So that's a pretty significant change. What I like about doing the first and the last is that this also helps us to really know what we have to do to get there. So that's 10 points over this next 6 months. So that's about 2 percentage points per month. So 88, 90, 92, 94, and 96. So that's a nice steady increase by knowing where my end result is going to be. So the next 2 things are the mechanisms. And by the way, we run into this a lot with working with chapters and with them establishing chapter goals, is that sometimes we have the tendency to overanalyze things. And that is absolutely fine to do if you have the time to do it. But it can be paralyzing. And for example, when we're establishing the percentage goals, it may be more hyper realistic to say, oh, well, you know what, in December when we have holidays, we have Christmas and New Year's and all this kind of stuff, we kind of know attendance is going to dip a little bit. So maybe I should carve those attendance numbers down a bit. And you know what, in the summer, in July, we have 4th of July and some people taking vacations, and maybe we want to dip that one down a little bit. And we can spend a lot of time doing that. Now, my opinion is that don't overcomplicate it. get some goals in there. You can always go back and adjust your goals if you need to. Make them bigger, make them smaller, make them more, again, super accurate to the time of year. But what I caution you against is it's better to have something in there than nothing. And a lot of times we can get lost in that minutia of spending hours and hours and days pinpointing exact numbers only to run out of time and get nothing in there. So yeah, my personal opinion. So looking at that, the mechanisms, what are the mechanisms? The mechanisms are your reminders of what am I going to do that month to support those goals. Now, they could be something as simple as having the education coordinator do an education moment at the chapter meeting supporting this goal. So maybe this first month I want to make sure in February, I want to make sure that we do an educational moment. I'm just going to abbreviate that as EM about let's say the importance of attendance. And maybe I even want to have them use the Ivan Meisner, Dr. Meisner has a number of podcasts and things out there, maybe a supporting podcast that goes with that. I know one of his famous sayings is, you can't get a haircut over the phone. So it's very important to be there to network with the other fellow chapter members. So maybe I'll have the education coordinator do an educational moment about that. And that's only 1 week, so what's another thing that we might be able to do that month in order to support it? Well, attendance, one of the things that helps to drive attendance is making sure that the vice president is sending out control letters. The Burr chapter was feeling bad about sending the control letters. You've been absent once, you've been absent twice, you've been absent 3 times. But that's one of the things that just makes BNI work, is that accountability aspect of it. So we want to make sure our members are accountable to showing up to the chapter meetings. So what we're going to do here is to put in a mechanism of make sure the VP is sending control letters. Okay? So those are a couple of mechanisms. Now we can try to come up with mechanisms for the entire month. Or actually for the next 6 months if we'd like to. So we can put in some mechanisms for March and April and May and June and come up with some of these ideas. For example, maybe in March we want to start playing the BNI game, which always helps with attendance. If you're looking for some ideas for the for various mechanisms and supporting activities, take a look at the chapter goal guide up here at the top, the chapter goal guide. When you click on the chapter goal guide, you'll see a long list of all of the different chapter success drivers and supporting mechanisms to help you with that. So for example, for attendance, how about making sure that you do follow-up phone calls by the membership committee? So when somebody is absent, somebody from the membership committee calls up and says, hey, is everything okay? We missed you at the meeting today. So aside from just sending out the letters, this is a nice personal touch that says, hey, we value your attendance and we missed you. Hey, bring your sub day and make sure that you hand out the VP report so people know how many absences that they have. So these are all great mechanisms. And if you find one you like, let's say that we want to do the follow-up phone calls. I think that's a great idea. I'm going to highlight it and copy it and go back to my list here, and I'm going to paste it into the March activity. And really all we need to do is to go through and continue to do those chapter goals. So let's take a look at some of the other goals. Here's where it takes a twist as well. I don't recommend that you do this in order. I recommend that you go out of order because so many of the rest of these are dependent on a couple of other ones. Here's the order that I recommend you go in. After you got your attendance percentage down, one of the next most important things that you're going to need to decide that will drive all of the rest of the numbers is how big you want your chapter to be. How many members do you envision your chapter having? So let's scroll down to the number of members in a chapter. And this is going to drive, again, all of the rest of the numbers. So right now, our chapter is struggling, and we have 20 members in the chapter, but we really, really want to get up and above 30 members. So let's make it a goal for the next 6 months to get to 30 members. And then we're going to split the difference again. So that's a growth of 10 members, which is a pretty aggressive goal. That's a 50% growth. But that means we're going to go up by 2 members each month. Okay. And then, of course, we can come up with some mechanisms to support that. What's a good way to increase the number of members? Well, let's have a visitors day. So what we're thinking now is, well, we need to schedule that out in advance. It can't just say, show up to a chapter meeting and say, hey guys, we're going to have a visitors day next week. That is a surefire way to have your visitors day fail. You really need to plan those 45 to 60 days in advance. So what we're going to do is we're going to have our visitors day in April, but we need to be planning that as early as next month. So plan for visitors day and announce the visitors day. And there is a full process for running a great visitors day. Just talk to your executive director. They can share all of that information with you. But the important point is that what we're doing with these mechanisms is we're reminding ourselves to do the things that we've got to do. All right, and the great thing about the mechanisms too is that there could be a single mechanism that supports multiple months. So a visitors day in April, well, that supports attendance as well. So let's take a look and drop that into there. Does a visitors day support visitors? Yeah, absolutely. Let's drop that into the visitors. Does it support new memberships? Absolutely. Let's make sure we have our visitor day in that column as well. And once we've got that filled out with our mechanisms, let's look at the next one. So if we know how many members in the chapter we have now, and we know how many we want to get to, then we kind of know how many new members we need every month, right? So we can say that, all right, so starting next month, in order to go from 20 to 22, we're going to need 2 new members, right? Well, that's the easy answer, but one thing to think about is that every chapter has a little bit of attrition. We all lose members. I mean, otherwise our chapters would likely have hundreds of members in them. Now, a lot of times we lose members for unpreventable reasons. So not because they're not doing well in BNI. A lot of times it's just for the opposite. Maybe they're doing too well in BNI. They don't have the resources right now to hire people, so they need to go out and take care of all those new clients. So that's one reason why somebody might leave BNI. Another reason might be that they're moving. They're moving to a different town or a different house or a different state or a different country. Maybe they got a promotion at their job and they're no longer in sales, or they can't perform this anymore. So there's a ton of reasons why people leave that we can't really prevent those from happening. On average, most BNI chapters will lose about a member per month, or about 12 members per year. And we should really take that into account when we're looking at the number of new members we need in order to sustain our chapter as well as grow it. I mean, to sustain our chapter, we would really need to be looking at making sure we get 1 new member every month. So if we actually want to grow by 2 members each month, then we're going to need really 3 new members. So I'm going to fill this out, 3 new members all the way across, and that should help us to increase. Now, again, going back to making this more realistic, or looking at it in a different way, if we know we're having a visitors day in April, realistically, hopefully we're going to be getting 10 new members that month, and we can adjust our other numbers accordingly. But for now, I'm going to keep it simple and just have that be a goal for 3 new members per month consistently. And again, we have plenty of mechanisms for new memberships. We have that supporting visitors day. Maybe we want to do something like, one thing that we were never good at was making sure that we actually invite our visitors to put an application into the chapter. Why do most visitors not join? Because they walk out of the meeting without an application, without being asked to be part of your wonderful group. So what we want to do is make sure that we are doing the visitor orientation process. And that's something we're going to work on in February. And you know what? It's going to take a couple of months to make sure that we have that going correctly. So we're going to bring that into March as well. And again, if you need more ideas, click on the chapter goal guide. So moving up the list here, where do new members come from? Well, new members come from visitors. In order to have new members, they do need to visit the chapter first. So if we know how many visitors, or we know how many new members we need, we should be able to calculate how many visitors we might need to get. So visitors, you do have to keep in mind, what is your conversion rate? So how many visitors are showing up to the chapter versus how many people are being accepted into the chapter? You know, if we had 100% conversion rate, every single person that joined, then we would need, basically 3 visitors per month in order to have them turn in 3 applications and be accepted. But the reality is that there are a number of people that apply that don't join or that aren't accepted. There's a bunch of people that visit that don't apply to the chapter. So everybody's conversion rate is a little bit different, but let's say that, I say on average it's somewhere between 1 in 3 and 1 in 5. So somewhere between a 30% and a 20% conversion rate. So let's say that you are a 1 in 4 chapter, so a 25% conversion rate. We can just say, well, in order to get 3 new members, we're going to need 12 visitors next month because only 1 in 4 are joining. So we're going to carry that across 12, 12, 12, 12. And as always, you can make this more accurate by keeping in mind visitors days and things like that. And there are a ton of mechanisms to support visitors as well. So moving on, we have our number of visitors. Now we can start looking at the actual performance of the chapter from a member perspective. So total number of one-to-ones, referrals, CEUs. Now in our region, and again, this is just here in Rhode Island, or in, I guess, Antarctica, we prescribe to the theory of 1, or the power of 1. So our goal for our members is that we want to make sure that everybody is bringing 1 of everything. So on a weekly basis, we want to bring or generate 1 referral for another member of the chapter. We want to make sure that we're having at least 1 one-to-one per week. And we want to make sure that we are doing 1 CEU in order to learn more about BNI and networking. We also want to make sure that we are part of the absence thing. We're absent no more than once every 6 months, and we're also bringing 1 visitor per month. But when it comes to the number of referrals and one-to-ones and CEUs, the way we can then calculate this is, I know that we have, let's say, 20 members in the chapter. If each member is bringing in 1 per week, that's 4 per month on average. So we're going to call this 80. And then next month, because we're going to have 2 more members, hopefully, we are going to call that 22 times 4, or 88. And we can just move up from there, adding 8 more each month. So 96, 104, 112, and 120. Great thing about that is the exact same number I'm going to use for one-to-ones and CEUs. So we have 80, 88, 96, 104, 112, and 120. And same thing for CEUs, 80, 88, 96, 104, 112, 120. And again, we have tons of mechanisms we can use. We could play the business card game. We can do the BNI game. We can really do tons of things. We can promote these BNI webinars, which gives people CEUs, all sorts of mechanisms there. Then the final thing is your thank you for closed business. And here is where I actually recommend that you look at it from a yearly basis. So how much business do you want to close in 12 months for your chapter? And then divide it by 12. And that should be your benchmark on a monthly basis. So in our chapter, The Burr chapter wants to be $1 million chapter. We want to be over $1 million chapter. So that means we really need to be closing about $100,000 a month. That'll make us a $1.2 million chapter. So I'm going to put in 100,000 for each month here. When you're all ready, and I also recommend doing this every once in a while you're inputting your goals, click the Save button. Are you sure you want to save it? Absolutely. Just like a Word document or an Excel document, save it every now and again so you don't lose it. If you do walk away from your computer, there is a half-hour timeout on the website. So you will be kicked out after 30 minutes, and if you haven't saved it, it will be gone forever. So please do save it. You can always go back and edit them as well, even past numbers. So if you were too aggressive or not aggressive enough in your various calculations, you can go back and update those. So after we've done that, you want to go back in and go to Manage Goals, and now you can view your chapter goals. And here's where they will start putting in your results. So here I had done goals for the past 6 months through some previous webinars, and you can see that they started putting in the actual number. So we were shooting for 88% attendance. We got 97% attendance. 90%, we actually got 97. In December, we actually had 100%, and the same thing with all of the other metrics. Now, this is Antarctica, so why don't we take a look at a real region? As I mentioned earlier, that Florida region, the Central West Florida, for example, Tampa Bay, they use these chapter goals. So every single chapter in the region does this. So I can pretty much pick just any random chapter. Let's take a look at the BNI Platinum chapter, and we're going to view their chapter goals. So, and they have yet to fail me. Every single time I've randomly chosen a chapter, they have been filled out. So here we go with the BNI Platinum chapter. Their long-term vision is to build our chapter brick by brick into a thriving, sustainable group of referral partners with 40-plus members passing over $1.5 million in business every year. Their mission statement is to put some muscle behind the hustle and grow our chapter to 45 by 95. All right, so let's take a look at some of their results. You can see their goal was 100% attendance across the board, 96, 91, 94, 100. They're doing pretty well so far. Let's take a look at their total number of one-to-ones, 210, 180, 255, 210. Yep, looks like they're just about hitting their goal. So October, they came pretty close. In November, they exceeded their goals. In December, they were a little shy, and with a partial month so far in January, it looks like they're going to exceed their goals with a couple of weeks left here in the year and the month. And we can see all of their different mechanisms they've come up with. Here's an educational moment on creating and updating your gains profile for one-to-ones, which you can do in BNI Connect. So that, my friends, is the goals program. Now, if you look at the GoToWebinar software, you'll see a section that has handouts. And what I did was I took a blank goals report for you and made it so that you can do this offline. So I would personally find it much easier to go and sit with your leadership team with a pen and a piece of paper and kind of jot these down kind of offline. If you would prefer to do that, download that chapter goals. If you're listening to this on a recording, if you would like a copy of the chapter goal, the blank chapter goals, just email support@bniconnect.com, support@bniconnect.com, and we will be happy to email a copy of it to you. All right, do we have any questions? We are at the bottom of the hour, so I'd like to open this up for questions. And of course, if anybody does need to leave right away, then I thank you for being here, and I look forward to seeing you on a future webinar. So any questions at all? All right, George asks, can we go back and change our goals? Yes, absolutely. If you need to change your goals, just go in, click on Manage Goals, enter Chapter Goals, choose the month range, so it has to be within the 6-month range. But I mean, theoretically, you could go back in time even and change the goals. They're not, once you put them in, they don't become read only or anything like that. So yes, you can go back and change them anytime you'd like to. All right, George, hopefully that helps. Let's see. John says, can we print our chapter goals out? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, every report in BNI Connect is able to be printed. If I go back to the view chapter goals, so operations chapter, manage goals, view chapter goals, this is essentially the goals report. And you'll notice up here in the top, we have export and print. So if we print this, we can print out our chapter goals. So if that's something you'd like to pass out to your chapter. Now, if you're not happy with the spacing or anything like that, you can, of course, always export this to Excel. So this is actually how I made the blank sheet, is I started with just exporting this out to Excel. And from there, I just kind of, I used a blank copy. But nice, easy way to get this into Excel format. And if you'd like to, you can print it out from there in a more printer-friendly format if you'd like. So good question. Thanks, Joe. I'm sorry, John. All right. Do we have any other questions? All right. So if you do want to share this with other people in your region or other people in your chapter, of course, you can share the recording. There's also a guide, a walkthrough. If you click on this question mark in front of any function in BNI Connect, that will take you to the help document for that function. So there's the video within there. There's walkthrough guides, shows you exactly what to do and what everything means. And if you click on the big question mark, that will take you directly to our help site. And you'll see a good referral for me is to please let people know about these webinars. Again, our very next webinar is going to be this coming Tuesday, so 6 days from now, January 26th. And we're going to be going through the leadership team tools and reports. So we're actually going to dive deep into leadership team functions. We're going to talk about how do you enter POMS reports, how do you enter visitors, how do you enter the speaker rotation, how do you assign mentors and mentees, and then some of the reports within BNI Connect as well from a leadership team perspective. So please join us on Tuesday of next week, same time, 3 p.m. Eastern. Stormy asks, what have you found is the most effective way to energize members to get them actively involved with the goal creation? What I find, you're never going to get the whole chapter involved in it, in my opinion anyway. So what I've done is I've held open leadership team meetings in the past. So there's times when you just need to have your leadership team there, just your president, vice president, secretary, treasurer. And a lot of times what I would do, though, is once a quarter, I would just say, okay, we're having an open leadership team meeting. We're going to be meeting at Applebee's, and anybody that wants to come and join us, we're going to be hashing out the chapter goals. You guys want to put your input? Why don't you come along to that meeting? You could also do that just following a chapter meeting, or really anytime you'd like to. You could even, if you had a GoToMeeting account or something like that, do this electronically over the internet as a web meeting, just the same way we're doing it here today. So does that help, Stormy? N. Tucker, who I believe is Nancy, says thank you from Southwest Arizona. Dawn says thank you. Paolo says, isn't for references, visitors, CEU, and BBIs, which is, for those of you who don't know what a BBI is, a business building interview, which is the same as a one-to-one, per month per member, realistic to expect. Are you saying that we're underperforming with 4 of those, or are you saying it's unrealistic that we should be asking for less participation? We do feel that in my region, my real region, Rhode Island here, we do feel that it is a realistic thing to ask for. We treat it as kind of, but that's our minimum expectation. I mean, of course, we want to be doing more than that, but we feel that to even have moderate success in BNI, that's really what you should be kind of pushing for, in my opinion. Does that kind of answer your question, Paolo? Is that what you were referencing? All right. Do we have any additional questions? Any questions at all? All right. Well, on that note, what I'm going to say is thank you guys so much for being here today and spending the time, not just, with me. I love having you here, but really spending the time to better your chapter and better your region and better the other members. And I really wish you the best in 2016, and I really look forward to seeing you on a future webinar. Thank you guys again, and happy connecting.